Hey everybody, Barry Kleiman. I believe this is the final one as far as I could do my homework. Honestly, I lost track, but I think we've covered all of LinkedIn's 26 most asked interview questions, and we will have when this one is done. A very popular one, of course, and I think, again, maybe, I don't know, 250,000 people wanted answers to this. I think the answer that LinkedIn provided works for me, but it doesn't work. Um, I don't think it's the first question anybody should be asking. They say their number one reply is the last five people who've held this position, where are they now? And the writer writes, hands down, the best question I've ever heard. I wish I could remember the source so I could attribute. Um, and they say if it's a new company, there may not be somebody in this position or the last five people, but you get the point. So I think that's a fine question. I do not think in any way, shape, or form it certainly doesn't fit the model and the structure of how I think you or myself or my kids or anybody I'm involved with should approach this. Right? It's a win-win. It's conversation, not interrogation. It's be authentic. It's tell stories, and it's more than anything else try in some way, I've said this dozens of times now through these series, to connect with somebody on the other side of the desk. Not everything works all the time. But again, as a mentor of mine, Brian Kurtz says, not everything can be a revenue event, but everything can be a relationship event. If you grab hold of that and recognize the genius of it, I didn't say it, Brian did, but it's absolutely true, and that's why I believe so much in connecting. So that's a little quick rant, I guess. The way I have always taught this, it's in my book, and again, I'm happy to send copies of it to you if you want to write to me. My email address is always in the bottom of the notes. But I've written about this. I've said this. I've given this spiel 1,000 times. I don't know, a lot. And so to me, and again, push back all you want, that's fine. To me, the number one thing that I would want to know if I were sitting in an interview and somebody asked me, do you have any questions? In fact, if I only had time for one question, this would be it. And the question is, would you mind telling me something about yourself? Right? So you just sat in an interview and it lasted however long it lasted, and we've gone through these 26 most asked questions, and you've bared your soul, and you've talked about your strengths and your weaknesses, and um, times you were in a difficult position, or times you had to persuade somebody. What all of these other questions are, and they're good questions, right? They're designed to help the people hiring understand you. But my dogma is, what about you? Don't you want to understand the other side of the equation as much as possible? Don't you want to honor yourself and your time and your career and your life, right? So I think, again, first things first, you're trying to humanize this experience. The best interviews are conversations, not interrogations. And I do want to know about the person on the other side of the desk. I had a meeting earlier this morning, and my intended result, or the result I should say I hoped for, didn't occur, but I wound up making a friend, and that was fine. In fact, I don't want to say too much because embarrass the person, but I'm going to wind up purchasing a product that this person is involved with. And looking forward to it, and looking forward to kind of representing what they're doing and his brand and all those kind of things. But it wasn't um, the result that I had hoped for, but it's okay. Not everything could be a revenue event, but everything could be a relationship event. You're not going to get every job you interview for, but there is an opportunity to connect with somebody on the other side. And that connection, I just cannot begin to tell you how potentially scalable that is. And you do want to know about that person on the other side. If you don't, I don't understand why. You might spend 9, 10, 12 hours a day with this person for the next few years? Don't you want to understand who they are and what they're about? So that would be, without a doubt, my number one. People say to me, well, what do I talk about? What do I ask about? You could say, these days, you could look them up on LinkedIn and find out where they've been and what they're into and so forth. If these days, back in live interviews, if you see knickknacks behind them, of course, I've got my um, Team USA jersey and a WNBA basketball, a couple of my books that I like, and my own book, of course. Pick out something behind them and say, I never read that book, but I read, this book. What did you think of it? And again, the reason I'm asking is I just want to try to get to know you a little bit. So that would be, without a doubt, could you please tell me about yourself? My number one. And if you don't do it, I just think you're setting yourself up for um, trouble later on of not understanding the person you're going to be spending a bunch of time with. The second thing I would say, and this is a template, right? So, and I'll put these in the notes, um, is if you broke anything along the way of your interview. If they ask you how much 2 plus 2 was, and you said 8, and fix it. You say, well, gosh, I couldn't. This is not necessarily a question, Mr. Interviewer, but I really want to make sure I corrected something I said. I thought you asked me how much was 2 cubed, and I was answering 2 cubed, and I know it was just simply 2 plus 2. It's okay to go backwards and use this time when they ask you if you have any questions. I know that's not a question, but it is an opportunity to fix something. And I would always recommend fixing something and not be embarrassed to do it. It shows character. It shows that you care. All these questions about tell me a time when you did this, or that. This is an anecdotal example of somebody who has a conscience, right, and cares about getting things right. So more than just giving some answer, you providing a fix it scenario, making sure you wanted to fix something um, that you kind of messed up or misstepped on is I would encourage you strongly to do it, right? In that same fix it sense, still the second point of the template that I always teach is if you didn't understand one of the scenarios that the interviewer was talking about, a potential, we have to do this before we do that, and then we do this and that, and you nodded, but the person was going too fast, and you didn't really have time to um, grab it then. Again, this fix it time, the second point of my template is fix it. Right? Say, this again, it is a question, but would you mind going back over with me what you said about X? So many people, when I first bring this to them, say, well, God is going to make me look like I'm stupid and not listening. I say the opposite. I say, no, 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 no. I think this makes you, proves that you pay attention to detail, that you care, that you're not sweeping stuff under the rug. It's a character statement. What do they say? Show me is more powerful than tell me. So don't be afraid to be authentic, right? And none of us are perfect. We all mess up. So anyway, fix it. Whether it's you gave a wrong answer, you didn't understand something, and that in this period, that would be the second thing I would encourage. The third thing is get back to the job. So what are the deliverables in this job? Who are my internal customers, and what do we need to do to make them happy? Right? Jobs are performance based, right? So we might as well know who it is we're trying to please or perform for, and how do we make them happy? How do they like to get the information? How do we best deal with them? So if you understand that problem, then you understand the position at a far deeper level, right? If you understand, well, Barry, we have 3 sets of customers. These guys, they only need this. These people only need that. But these people, and it's a good question, they like stuff a different way. So I'm glad you asked me that. And then you start to get what I call kind of inside the ropes, right, of the job and the company and the scenarios and the deliverables. It's look, you're about to go invest, assuming you get a job offer and accept it. You're about to go invest time you'll never recover, right? And if you go to work with this company, with these people, I, I think it's just completely integral to your own success that you understand the game you're playing. I was watching this Apple TV series Shantaram, I've written about this before, but I wrote it down again the other night. There's a quote in there: "Only a fool plays a game without knowing all the rules or the players." This was a line in this mini series, which is actually excellent, but it's true, right? Why wouldn't you want to know the rules of the game and the players before you go play it? How could you possibly win without knowing that? So anyway, the third thing is make sure you understand the deliverables and how you get them to people and what's the best way to make these people happy, right? It's part of your job. It is the job. The next one I would ask about is culture. You know, what's it like to work here? Every organization, every entity, every family has culture. Um, you can give an example of if someone says, well, what do you mean by culture? Give an example of a culture you had been in, whether it's a team or another company you worked for or whatever. You just say just kind of the way of working, how information flows, the general feel in the company. So culture, I think, is, again, really important. That would be the fourth one I would suggest you talk about and find out about. And the fifth one is future. So, and I would always tell people to position it like, you don't want to walk in, of course, and say, nice to meet you. When am I getting promoted? But you could and you should certainly say, and again, it's the fifth point, because I don't think it matters until you understand the person you're working for and the deliverables of the job and the culture, because you may not make it if some of those things aren't appropriate for you or good fits for both of you, of course. So you could say, look, 18 months, 2 years down the road, if I do everything we just talked about and do it really, really well, work at a position like this lead. You're not asking for guarantees. You're just trying to understand the path. And like the answer in the LinkedIn question, um, that answer was, tell me where the last five people who were in this job, where did they get to? I think I said that wrong, but what happened to the last five people in this job? Similar question, right? I think it's more appropriate, and as it relates to my issue of connecting first, not said, but the fifth one as opposed to the first one, right? Because you do want to know the future, but you're there first, for them to prove yourself to them. So I think that your future is integrally important, incredibly important. But as it relates to the job interview, I think it's placed there. So I would never ask about salary in the first interview. You have a chance to ask about salary if the job is offered to you. If they ask you about salary, that could be a whole other, an entirely other segment, and I'll probably do a video on that. But asking about salary in when you have any questions for me, I don't think is appropriate yet. There'll be time, and of course that's why we all work, right? But not in that scenario. Do you have any questions? Yeah, I do. What are you going to pay me? Seems ludicrous, right? Anyway, so that's it. So find out about the individual. Make sure you fix anything that was broken or you didn't quite understand, or an answer you weren't happy with. Clean it up. It's character. Understand the deliverables. What's it going to take to be successful? Understand how the company is culture wise, and then the future for somebody like you. So again, I'll put all these in the notes. I hope these have been helpful to everybody. This is Barry Kleiman. Once again, if you have any questions or comments or concerns, or you disagree vehemently with any of the things I had to say, that's fine. I'm open to dialogue, of course. If you'd like a copy of the book, just write to me. I'm more than glad to send it. I'm here to help. This is a labor of love at this point for me. Do I get clients out of it? I do sometimes, and that's great. But at least now people know who I am and how I do my business and how I communicate. So anyway, stay safe, everybody. I hope this is helpful. My email address will be in the notes, and I hope you've enjoyed this. I really enjoyed doing it, and look forward to catching up with you on the next page. Thank you.